Do you live in the US and want fast, fresh and tasty meals without the hassle of shopping or all that hard work preparation? Well, don't you worry, as a lazy man, I've got you covered. Try America's #1 meal kit service, HelloFresh, and get yourself fresh, pre-portioned ingredients delivered direct to your door. So why not eat well, stay healthy, and avoid the cost of regular takeout by trying HelloFresh? Just click the link in the description below for a special limited time discount and free shipping as well. Enjoy. Hello and welcome along to match day 35 of Championship predictions here from the Honest Football Podcast. We are back today with a full weekend fixture list, but before we go and get into those 12 games, we have got an awful lot to reflect on from the last 7 days. So we're going to start with last weekend, which was match day 34, and I did not do that well compared to most of you last week. I got 7 points with one perfect score. That, of course, was for Stoke 0, Millwall 1. A good away win for Millwall, who I saw play live on Tuesday night. Other perfect outcomes included West Brom beating Middlesbrough, which I got a lot of stick for in the comments, but in the end, I was the only one who managed to get that one right. My score of 7 points was surpassed by 2 of you though. This week's winner is Gordon McInnes, who picked up 11 points, including 3 perfect scores in a row for Bristol City, Burnley and Norwich in their home wins. And then W&G fan also beat me with 9, and a brilliant start with Coventry 2, Sunderland 1, an absolutely spot on prediction. So loads of you did better than me last weekend, but I'm taking that West Brom prediction as a win. In midweek, we all did pretty poor. A few of us on 1 point. Mine was for Luton's draw against Millwall. Jeff Eltringham being very helpful to my score prediction, but not my size chances of the playoffs. With that done though, let's move on to match day 35, and we start with a bit of familiarity on Friday night football. It felt a bit wrong last time, didn't it? Not having a West Midlands club playing on Friday night. Well, West Brom are in action this time. They travel to Hull City. Hull have not scored in 2 games. They were beaten 1-0 at Bristol City last weekend. That following a 0-0 against Preston. And they are just coming into a little sticky spell of form here. They're looking solid at the back, but goals are hard to come by. And maybe Liam Rossini's new manager bounce is just dwindling away. Albeit they did have a great chance to get a result in that match. On the other side of things, as I've mentioned twice already, I correctly predicted West Brom's win against Middlesbrough. 2 very early Daryl DK goals on the counter, and then West Brom just let Middlesbrough have the ball. They sat deep, they held them off comfortably, and albeit Borough had a couple of chances to get back into it, it was a very good win for the Baggies. You've got to say, they're not a good side to go behind against early on, particularly under Carlos Corberán, and generally he's done a very good job there. With a game in hand, they're still in with a sniff of the playoffs, and I think they're going to get even closer on Friday night. I think they're going to win away at Hull City. They kept a clean sheet last week, which was crucial after letting in 6 in 3. And Hull just can't score goals. So, albeit Friday nights normally aren't great games, I'm going to have to go for the same here. A 1-0 away win for West Bromwich Albion. And the Baggies train and the chase of the playoffs will keep on rolling. Let's move on to Saturday now then. 2 early kickoffs, including one on TV, and that game is Blackburn Rovers versus Sheffield United. Blackburn have certainly found some form again. 4 wins in a row now in all competitions. They spoilt the return of Gareth Ainsworth, their former youth player, to QPR last weekend with a 3-1 win there. Starting to find away form as well, which is remarkable. Their last 2 home games were 1-0 wins, and as was Sheffield United's last weekend. A 1-0 win at home to Watford, a crucial one after 2 very tricky games prior to that, and they get themselves back in control in second. Everyone was saying a week ago, oh, Middlesbrough are going to catch them now. I said, don't panic, it's just been a tough run of games. This one continues the tough run for Sheffield United. They'll be glad when this lot of fixtures is over. Blackburn at home have been brilliant, 11 wins from 16. Sheffield United, very good on the road. They've won half their games there, only lost 4 all season on the road. Oh, I don't know. Blackburn, they just had that run where they drew after none, didn't they? They've won 4 in a row, but Sheffield United are going to peg them back. I'm going to have to go for it. Sorry to bring it out already. The Championship's favourite scoreline of 1-1. Classic fence sitting there as we start the Saturday games. Moving on to the second early kickoff though, it is Cardiff City versus Bristol City. Cardiff had back-to-back wins spoilt by a 2-0 defeat away at Norwich, and to be fair, it was always the likely outcome, wasn't it? I mean, Norwich had more clear-cut chances, plenty of opportunities to score more, and Cardiff very little threat on the break away from home. So they're going to have to try and rely on their home form, which has been pretty average this year. And they play a Bristol City side that, yes, were of course given the run around and lost 3-0 against City in the Cup. But other than that, they have been in brilliant league form. They've crept up to 13th place. They've got a game in hand. They maybe can get themselves in the outskirts of the playoff push here. They don't score many in recent weeks, only one in each of their last 4 league games. But they've only conceded 2 in their last 5 in the league as well. Not like Bristol City for the most part this year. I really don't know what to go for this one. I was tempted to sit on the fence again, but I'm convinced it will be 1-0 either way. And I'm sorry for Bristol City, but they chased the ball for so long against City in midweek. I'm going to go for Cardiff to nick it. It's a game that means a lot more to Cardiff. They have got to push away from that relegation zone. And if things go right for them this weekend, they could go up a place or two and put a buffer between them and the bottom 3. So I'm going for Cardiff to nick it 1-0. But Bristol City have been absolutely excellent this calendar year. On to the 3 o'clock kickoffs, and we start with a very big game in the Northwest. It is Blackpool versus Burnley, the runaway leaders versus the relegation battlers. Blackpool had a lot of the ball and a lot of chances against Reading, but they couldn't cope with the aerial threat. And to be fair, they've not been as ruthless in recent weeks, really struggling to get going under Mick McCarthy and letting in more goals than a few of us probably thought as well. Whereas Burnley, 4-0 against Huddersfield. Neil Warnock said it was a free swing for the visitors. I don't think they had any swing, to be fair. Burnley were absolutely brilliant. It was out of sight early on. But this time on the road, they go to the second worst home team in the division. It's the sort of game where the Championship can do really funny things to you. But you have to predict a Burnley win. I think it's going to be comfortable. I'm going to go for 3-0 to the visitors because on the break, Burnley are just frightening. Well, the big games at the bottom keep on coming because Huddersfield Town are up next. Neil Warnock's side in his second home game face Coventry City. Coventry have played an extra game, of course, this week, which may be of benefit to the hosts. They drew 0-0 at Preston in midweek, which was actually a better game than many thought it was going to be. And they were very good at home to Sunderland in a 2-1 win on Saturday lunchtime. For Huddersfield, they got battered at Burnley. But of course, they won Warnock's first home game against Birmingham. They were a bit more expansive. They created chances. And of course, the crowd were in to roar them on. So I wonder if it's going to be the home form that keeps Huddersfield in the mix. As we predicted a Cardiff win earlier on, Huddersfield have probably got to get a result to get close to the edge of the relegation zone here. They're going to be relying on the likes of Birmingham, Rotherham and Cardiff to drop points. But at home, they have to pick up results. They have picked up the majority of their points at home this season, only 10 of them coming on the road, the rest of them at the John Smiths. I'm going to go for them to get something out of this, but not the 3 points. Coventry can't struggle to put away chances as much as they did in the week. They normally score a goal, they normally score late goals. So here's what I'm going for. A Huddersfield lead, then late on they'll tire, they'll probably drop back a bit, and Coventry will find a late equaliser. 1-1, my second Championship's favourite scoreline of the weekend. Next is the game I will be attending on Saturday, and it is Luton Town versus Swansea City. We expect Swansea to keep loads of the ball, as they did in their 1-1 draw against Rotherham, but can they convert that into chances? Because Rotherham arguably had more in that game. Certainly statistics would suggest so, although I don't think either side had many clear-cut ones. But Swansea, again, keeping the ball, but not able to find regular form. Luton, on the other hand, a really good 1-0 away win at Birmingham last weekend, and then a hard-fought comeback 2-2 draw against Millwall on Tuesday night. A very difficult start with the keeper dropping one in his net. These things happen, and then after a dominant start to the second half, conceded a sucker punch goal. Maybe could have been offside, but I'm not going to get involved in that. Of course, Luton will point to a number of clear-cut penalty decisions that should have been awarded. I mean, the fact that I was sitting at the game and getting messages from neutrals on Discord and WhatsApp saying, how is that not a penalty? You are getting mugged right off here. But we're not going to worry about it. It's a good point. Millwall looks a real threat on the counter, but Luton Town fought back and got a point, which is absolutely crucial at this stage of the year. The problem in this game is going to be, will Swansea make defensive errors? We know they're going to keep the ball. We know they're going to pass it around all day. And we know Luton will try and press them at the right moments. It's a hallmark of their game. Are Swansea going to make more defensive errors than Luton make poor pressing decisions? I'm going to bank on yes. I think Luton win this game. I don't often go for Luton to win. They'd probably be in the relegation zone on my predictions this year. But I'm going to go for them to win this one. I think it'll be comfortable too. We always concede one at home, but 3-1 to Luton Town. Into the second half of the fixtures now. It is Middlesbrough looking to bounce back against Reading. Reading have got to be careful here because although they've had a very good season, they're 13 points clear of the relegation zone. As I record this, there has just been a little bit of news that there might be a points deduction on the way. More EFL charges potentially to come. I mean, Paul Ince, he's doing everything he can on the pitch. 2 good home wins in the last 3 games against Blackpool and against Rotherham, playing to their strengths, and I know he alluded to it in one of his press conferences and actually didn't mind it. He got questioned about the style of play that Reading were using. I think it was after they lost at Cardiff on Sky. And he said, but look at teams like Luton and Millwall who don't play much football as such, they play direct, and look at where they are in the table, you're not asking them. And he's absolutely right. If Reading try and play football with the age inside they've got and the 3 big target men to choose from up front, they wouldn't be in mid-table. He's done a very good job, but he's going to have to do a spectacular one to get a result away at Middlesbrough. A rare blip in the road which we predicted at West Brom, but at home the train has been ridiculous under Michael Carrick. They score 3 a game, they look very threatening, and Reading away from home have been awful all year. They've only picked up 11 points on the road. That means their home record's spectacular, but it's not going to help them in this one. I think Middlesbrough bounce back and in style, and I'm going for the biggest win of the weekend. I didn't do it last weekend, I was a bit too reserved. Middlesbrough 4, Reading 1. Next up is a massive game in the battle for the playoffs. 7th place Norwich go to 5th place Millwall. Millwall kept that unbeaten run going, albeit a little fortuitously at Luton. Gifted a couple of goals, but in the end, fortunate with refereeing decisions and very resolute towards the end. They kept the ball out, and it's a good point in the end. I know that the 2-0 up, you'd probably say it's disappointing, but draws against Burnley and Luton, wins against Stoke and Sheffield United. I think that's a good couple of weeks for Millwall. And if you take aside all of the disappointment with the refereeing in that game, there's actually a lot to admire about that Millwall side. They've done a really good bit of work this year. They've recruited so well with Zian Fleming in for Jed Wallace. I know I've talked about it every week since pre-season. And Tom Bradshaw's obviously in great form at the moment. You can see the confidence he's playing with when he's battering and bruising defenders. Norwich, though, bounced back with another 2-0 win against Cardiff. That's 3 and 4 now after those disappointing couple of defeats. And they're starting to look better at the back as well. David Wagner has got them in form. But I'm not sure that's going to help them at Millwall. We saw in the Premier League last season, Norwich struggled with physicality. They did often get overrun and overfought in those sorts of games. And I look at the 2 sides on paper and think Millwall would just have too much. I can see it being a really good game, a really hard-fought game. But Millwall, for me, are just going to nick it. I'm going by 2-1. Well, this one is potentially another very big game at the bottom. It is Rotherham United versus QPR. 20th versus 18th, and both sides now within 8 points of the relegation zone. If the sides below pick up points as we have been predicting so far, these two could be in a world of trouble, depending on the outcome of this game. Rotherham, though, 4 points out of 6, a really hard-fought draw at Swansea. Arguably had a few more chances and could have won the game, but in the end they'll be pleased with that. Backed up a good home win, and this game is going to be crucial for them. QPR did not get the desired new manager bounce under Gareth Ainsworth. In fact, Blackburn were pretty comfortable for the most part, weren't they? QPR not really creating great chances, though they did have a bit more of the ball and a couple more shots. But to be fair, Blackburn looked like the winners. They look more threatening on the counter, and Gareth Ainsworth is going to have to do a lot of work with that defence. I'm not ruling QPR out of the relegation battle yet, which is remarkable given where they were last season under Mark Warburton, and of course that first 6 weeks or so under Mick Beale. But it's a heavy run of defeats, 1 win in 19 league games now, and Rotherham, they're back in form, they look great at home, and I can see them keeping QPR out. I'm going to go for Rotherham to win it, I'm going by 2-0, but Gareth Ainsworth really needs to pull up a performance here. Off to the northeast for our next game, it is Sunderland versus Stoke City. Stoke with back-to-back 0-1 defeats this week. First at home to Millwall in a game where they had most of the chances in the Championship, and then against Brighton in the FA Cup. No shame in that one. For Sunderland, back-to-back 2-1 defeats. The Rotherham game we talked about last week, they had so many chances, I don't know how they didn't win it. And then against Coventry, a good game of football, but again, that ruthless edge just wasn't there. It's really tricky, this one. I feel Stoke are just far enough away now that they're not going to have to worry given some of the teams below them. And Sunderland probably again just too far away and lacking firepower to get in the playoffs. With Ross Stewart, might have been a very different question. Of course, Alex Neil is going to get an absolutely awful reception when he comes to the Stadium of Light. And when you look at the table, you could argue he made the wrong decision. I just wonder if that's going to motivate the Sunderland players a little bit more. And given that I've got nothing else to separate these two sides with, and I don't just want to go 1-1 all the time, I'm going to go for Sunderland to nick it. Purely based on that, it will either lead to ill discipline from Sunderland and maybe a red card or a mistake that cost them, or it will inspire them to get one over on their old manager. He left them in the lurch. Tony Mowbray's done a great job stepping in. I'm going for 2-1 to Sunderland, purely based on that. On to our penultimate game, which is Watford at home to Preston. Watford have dropped out the playoffs now with that 1-0 defeat at Sheffield United. Preston, another 0-0, this time against Coventry. Was a better game than it looked, but they're a poor side to watch at home. So few goals at Deepdale, only 12 scored in 18 matches, not good enough really. But they're one of the best teams in the division on the road, and Watford, they've been inconsistent, they've been unconvincing, but they have generally been better at home. 3-2 against a good West Brom side, 1-0 against a strong Blackburn team. Do they get something out of this game? Preston away from home score more goals, albeit not many. And that's why I had to pick a winner in the last game, because I've got to sit on the fence in this one. Championship's favourite scoreline, Watford 1, Preston 1. And with Watford outside the playoffs now, I don't want to say it because I like him, but is Bilic under pressure? Because Watford, they've not normally given managers patience and they're in no better position than when Rob Edwards left back in September, October time. I'm going for 1-1 in this one, but I wouldn't be shocked if either side nicked a 1-goal win. Well, this final game is a huge one at the bottom of the table, isn't it? Wigan Athletic currently bottom against Birmingham City in 19th. 7 points separate these sides, and this is what I mean about it being close. If Wigan beat Birmingham in this game, the gap will be 4. And now you're saying it's a proper relegation battle. Wigan lost 2-1 away at Preston. Disappointment, but can we just say the penalty decision for the equaliser, and I know I mentioned the Luton ones earlier, how that was given, I will never know in a million years. I do feel for Wigan because in a game like that, they're so important at the bottom of the table for survival. They played pretty well as well. A draw would have been a fair result, I feel. For that, it really turned the game, and it was never, ever, ever a penalty. But Preston managed to take advantage. For Birmingham, a 1-0 defeat at home to Luton. No shot on target. They were poor again. I mean, how they didn't get a red card. Again, we're talking about decisions, and I don't like to do it, but John Eustace was defending a tackle after. It's a horror challenge. And in the end, it was only given as a yellow card. Oh, I don't know what to go for on this one. I've got a sneaky feeling that Wigan win it, you know, because Birmingham have been in atrocious form after a pretty good start to the season. 4 defeats in a row, only 2 goals scored in that time, and Wigan have been much better defensively under Sean Maloney. I know they're the worst team in the league at home, but I'm going for it. The same as they did against Huddersfield in that big game at the bottom. I'm going for a 1-0 Wigan win. That will put the cat amongst the pigeons. I've predicted Huddersfield to get a point, Wigan to get a win, and Cardiff to get a win. Oh, it's going to get tense down at the bottom if I'm right this weekend. 1-0 Wigan to finish. Well, let's have a quick recap of this weekend's predictions. And I have gone for some pretty emphatic wins, haven't I? We've got 4-1 for Middlesbrough, who are going to bounce back against Reading. I've gone for a 3-0 win for leaders Burnley away from home. And some other very tough predictions down at the bottom. If I'm right about this weekend, then QPR and Birmingham are going to be looking very nervously over their shoulder come Saturday evening. Do you agree with my predictions or disagree with them though? Let me know down in the comments section. Give us your predictions for matchday 35, and as you saw at the start of this episode, if you beat my score, you will get a mention in the next recap. If you did enjoy this episode and are looking forward to the weekend of championship action, then please do put a thumbs up on it. Subscribe for regular content from the Honest Football Podcast. We will be back again on Sunday with a mini midweek predictions. 3 big games, including 2 that are huge at the bottom of the table. I hope you're looking forward to that one. In the meantime, you can check out all the other playlists and stuff up in the eye above. If you're in the US, check out the HelloFresh link in the description. You can support the show as a channel member by clicking the join button too. And we'll see you back here on Sunday for another episode of Championship Predictions.